Welcome to the Retail Insider video interview series. I'm your host, Craig Patterson, and we're joined here today with a special guest. This is Kris Zanuldin. He's the head of KONEK at Interac. Thank you so much for joining us today, Kris.
No, thanks for inviting me. Glad to be here.
Now, can you tell us what KONEK is and how Interac developed it?
Yeah, KONEK is a new Canadian e-commerce payment solution that's designed to give Canadians more choice and trust in whenever they're transacting online. And Interac developed it because I think we see an opportunity. I think in my previous life, one of the things that I've noticed is in the history of technology, the thing that actually drives consumer adoption in any new technologies is accessibility, trust, and convenience. And when we look at the payments landscape today, especially in Canada, I think we've identified an opportunity and a bit of a gap for Canadians and Canadian retailers, where we think that promise of trust, accessibility, and convenience isn't fully met. And so that's why we've got KONEK now.
Excellent. Are there other ways that KONEK also addresses some of the current challenges in Canadian e-commerce payments?
Yeah, I think in Canadian e-commerce, payments is always a two-sided business. You've got the merchant view and you've got the retailer view and you've got the consumer view. I think on the retailer merchant side, it's probably no surprise to any retailer when I say some of the challenges that they're facing today: rising cost of payments, increasing fraud just because fraud is getting more sophisticated. And then more importantly, rising expectations of consumers. I think I like to joke in a previous life, 20 years ago, you and I would have been super excited if we went on a website. No matter how many clicks it took, we would order something and 2 weeks later it'd magically show up and we were just so impressed. And then nowadays, if the customer doesn't get it in a day and they don't have one-click button checkouts, they frequently email you, "Where's my stuff?" and you have a terrible experience. So the consumer experience they're divinely discontent. They're rightly pushing retailers to create better experiences. So merchants are faced with those challenges. And on the consumer side, I think it's also, we see a lot of interesting trends, right? One is trust and privacy, especially in Canadian e-commerce, is a huge concern of Canadians. I think 4 in 5 consumers say protection of personal data is really, really important. I also think that when you think about the younger generation, which is starting to come online, like the Gen Z, we've seen some interesting research on the Interac side where making sure they have all their payment options, especially sort of bank payment or pay by bank debit type of payment options, is really important to them. And over half of them will actually choose those kind of payment options if it was offered. So that goes back to, I think, the merchant concern around how do I continue to increase conversions in a world where customers are demanding more out of me.
Let's talk a bit more about some of the merchant benefits. Tell me a bit about why Canadian retailers and e-commerce businesses otherwise should consider integrating KONEK into their system.
The benefit for me is I came from that side as well. And I think for a retailer and a merchant, you're really focused on 2 main things, right? Increasing revenue and conversions on your website and e-commerce properties and reducing costs, right? And I think KONEK is a bit unique in the sense that obviously we help you do both. I think there's a lot of other solutions out there that can probably help you do one, which is increase conversions, make things more easy, make checkout more simpler. But reducing cost is actually a real challenge, right? Payment costs, as I said earlier, is a huge concern of retailers. It's rising, it's getting more expensive. And I think KONEK has this benefit that because we are created out of a collaboration out of the FI ecosystem, where we're collaborating with financial institutions to deliver KONEK, our job is actually to do 2 things for retailers. One is to help increase conversions and make sure you maximize those transactions, but also to reduce your costs, especially cost of payments. And we've seen that by giving consumers full choice, especially the pay by bank option, which is Interac Direct on our side. We can help you reduce those payment costs as well.
And you mentioned conversion rates, and also now what will KONEK do in terms of, say, cart abandonment? That's related though, I think.
I've worked in payments for over 20 years, and I think there's a lot of research both publicly as well. We've done our own, like the sort of the Baymard Institute is a very famous sort of research institute that does a lot of these types sort of online checkout research. And it's no surprise, I think, for a lot of retailers that have probably seen this research, right? A big portion of conversion loss or increases come from how simple, how easy is your checkout flow, right? There's always optimizations that I know retailers, whether you're a small retailer or a large retailer with an e-commerce property, you're constantly thinking about your checkout flow, your e-commerce flow in general. And I think Baymard said something like 35% increase possible in terms of more simpler checkout flows. So One area is around how do we make sure that the checkout is super, super convenient for consumers. But another thing also goes back to one thing I've learned also is going back to, I think, one of KONEK's biggest benefits to both retailers as well as consumers is choice, right? Payment choice. And it has also been proven that by giving consumers more choice to pay how they want, it's really important. And that also affects conversion rates as well. So not only does KONEK try to improve the checkout flow by making it more convenient, we're also trying to improve conversion rates by giving customers no reason to abandon the checkout because they didn't have the payment choice that they were looking for.
Now, we touched on fraud a little bit already. I don't know if we want to get into that with a bit more of a discussion, but KONEK, as you said, has helps reduce fraud already. Heard other payment options, right?
So I think there's two major things that we do. One is, fraud is a really complicated space. Having had to build a fraud prevention system in my old life, it's a cat and mouse game. And depending on the cycle with AI lately, we all feel like the mice right now. The good guys feel like the mice, not the cats. But it is challenging. But I think there's a couple of things, two things that I think that KONEK offers retailers in terms of fraud prevention. One is we are basically integrated and offering what is, in my view, some of the best-in-class fraud detection, fraud prevention sort of systems, right? Multi-layered systems from checkout protocols all the way down to tokenization and also fraud detection, because it's coming from the financial institutions, right? Who have to fight that battle on a daily basis, right? So the good news for retailers is you get access to what is essentially the best-in-class fraud prevention sort of systems and detection systems from financial institutions. The second thing is, I think because of the nature of our desire to reduce sort of ecosystem costs and the fact that we're sort of partnered with and backed by the financial institutions, all retailers that use KONEK also have full liability shift. So if a customer authenticates and uses KONEK on the retailer side and fraud gets reported, the retailer is not liable for that. The issuers and the FIs have taken full responsibility for that, which is a huge sort of benefit for retailers. As we know, fraud liability is a big cost for retailers.
It would be. I feel like I've got potential scams coming at me all the time.
I know, yeah.
How easy is it for merchants to integrate KONEK into their existing checkout systems?
Yeah, I think integration is the name of the game. One of the things that we've done is we've built it to be a more modern payment solution. So it's based on APIs and a single integration point that allows merchants to easily integrate it. The other thing that we've done actually is we've recognized, and this is a pain point that I remember when I was on the retail side, is people don't realize downstream for a lot of retailers and merchants, your settlement systems, your reporting systems is all very tightly integrated with your acquirers and who offer a lot of your payment processing services, right? And so we've actually integrated with the acquirers, Moneris being the first, that will allow retailers to benefit from the KONEK integration as seamlessly and easily as possible through that Moneris or acquire integration. And that was intentional because we wanted to make it both easy to integrate and we made it modern and easy to integrate, but also we wanted to make sure that we weren't creating more operational burden. And by being part of the acquire integration package, it seamlessly sort of all slots in. So the retailer doesn't have to worry about separate downstream operational challenges like reporting and settlement, which I know has become a pain point.
Let's talk a bit about the functionality and user experience. Can you walk us through the checkout experience for a customer who's using KONEK, and what would it look like in practice?
Yeah, if you were a consumer, I think you would first encounter KONEK probably in two places. One is obviously at a retailer or merchant checkout, but second is also because one of the benefits of being part of the financial institution ecosystem with our sort of launch partners on the financial institution side is they're also encouraging their consumers, their customers to sort of enroll into KONEK. And that's really important because as we all know, the first time setup journey of any payment solution, regardless of which payment solution, it's always a bit more of a labor intensive sort of process. You have to sort of authenticate it and sort of add create your account. But we've tried to make that as easy as possible. And the benefit of us is that we get to leverage the financial institution's entire authentication system. So you would log in as if you were logging into your bank account. And once you do that, we've established that authentication and you can create a pass key, which is really important for the future return journey. So the next time or when you're at the checkout, you literally just authenticate with KONEK as if you were authenticating your bank. And in some cases, just a pass key, like a facial ID. And then you would be presented with the full range of payment options, which is the real benefit of KONEK, right? We have a tagline internally, a North Star. We say, Our vision is to tell customers, pay who you want, how you want, easily, right? And so giving them the full range of options. And that's really important because Canada is a diverse nation and customers are diverse. And even depending on the situation, if you're buying a large ticket purchase item online, like a plane ticket versus, you're just buying, paper towel reorders, the way you want to pay and how you want to fund that could be different. And by giving the consumer that choice at time of checkout, I think that again goes back to the conversion uplift. And so you'd basically choose that, and just like any other sort of payment solution, you're ready to go. And the good news is we would pre-fill a lot of the checkout information with the information we obviously receive from the bank. You would obviously have the chance to edit that. But this goes back to trying to make it as smooth and seamless as possible and not put a lot of work on the customer side.
Let's talk a bit about the Canadian advantage, as well as we'll get a little more into security and trust. Why is it important that this is a made in Canada payment solution backed by Canadian financial institutions, which I think is terrific?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of reasons. One is, as I mentioned, Canada is a very diverse nation. I think we have a lot of diversity in terms of the customer base. And I think it's important to recognize that, this is not the days of Ford Model T. You can have any color as long as it's black. You need to give customers choice. And that's one of the big sort of things that we're very committed to with KONEK, is to give customers choice in how they pay. And because of that, I think it's also generational in nature. As I said, people change how they want to pay and their choice depending on the generation. So that's one aspect, is the diversity of Canada itself is important. The second thing is, Canada is if you operate a business in Canada, you'd recognize this. It's a very specific, regulated sort of environment. And it's important for whatever payment solution that you're utilizing or service that you're utilizing, recognizes the nuances of how it is to operate and be successful in Canada. And so, the benefit of obviously being backed by the financial institutions in partnership with us on KONEK is that you're basically benefiting from people that are really in the know about what it means to be Canadian as a business, and all that it entails from a regulation and sort of security standpoint. And lastly, I think it's also really important that Canadians have a very high degree of trust, especially with the financial institutions. And they have a lot of trust in our sort of financial system, right? Which is obviously government regulated, more so than in some other countries. And I think that trust is really important. And so retailers who use KONEK can obviously benefit from that trust. You're basically tapping into, by association, one of the most trusted, or some of the most trusted institutions that Canadians view, not just Interac, but also the financial institutions.
That's right, because Interac is known, it's got a long-standing reputation, I guess you'd say, for security and reliability and digital payments, and it's Canadian.
Yeah, exactly. And I think for us with KONEK, it's just an extension of that, right? Like, I think everything that Interac has provided to Canadians with our other products and services around privacy and security, we're just extending that with KONEK. And I think that's really important, that, again, going back to the retailer perspective, you get to really benefit from that trust and security.
That is terrific. Now, Staples Canada, I believe, is the first national merchant to adopt KONEK. Tell me a bit about how that's going and what that means for Staples and its customers.
Yeah, we're really excited. Staples is right now, we're in the last mile of the upcoming launch, and this sort of comes back full circle. They'll be the first sort of retailer in Canada to really showcase the promise of what we're trying to deliver for Canadians with KONEK, right? A more convenient, trustworthy experience that's built for Canadians by Canadians, that gives them as much accessibility and choice as possible from a payments experience perspective. And having Staples as a partner is great as a first launch merchant to really showcase that promise. And I don't want to sort of steal their thunder, but when they go live, you start to see like really a best in class, in our mind, sort of payment experience that really starts to show that promise for Canadians. And so they've been a really good partner, and I'm really excited to seeing them showcase basically all the things that you and I have just been talking about.
Now, without naming any names specifically, are there any other merchant types or sectors that you see as natural early adopters that could benefit from KONEK?
Yeah, I think the benefit of KONEK, when you think about the key things that we've just talked about, Craig, like it's about having a service that's very trustworthy, that maximizes sort of choice from a payments perspective, that also has best in class, almost bank grade security and sort of fraud detection. There are a lot of sectors that can really benefit from that. So it's almost ubiquitous in some ways. But in my previous life, Think about retail when you're trying to ship goods. That's always important because you don't want scammers to basically intercept those. When you're in digital goods, that's also really important because you can't really see sometimes who's transacting in digital goods sort of sectors. And then travel, high ticket items, right? It's a high ticket, highly sensitive sort of sector when it comes to fraud. So again, these are the sectors that would naturally benefit from a payment service like KONEK. But as we said, we built this to be from the ground up as ubiquitous as possible because in some ways it's our promise back to consumers as well that the more KONEKs available, you can pay who you want, right? How you want.
Let's talk about the future roadmap for KONEK. How do you see KONEK fitting into the broader digital landscape in Canada while benefiting e-commerce and other retailers in the longer term, I guess you'd say, whatever longer term is as AI makes time shorter?
We definitely keep we have a roadmap and we definitely keep an eye on all the future trends. Interac as a whole also does that, and obviously we partner with our financial institution counterparts to make sure that we're always keeping in mind. So we have a pretty robust roadmap around things that we're already starting to anticipate. And I think for me, it's two things. One is bringing to life that consumer promise, right? Like I think, Canada deserves a better payment service that's more accessible, more trustworthy, and is obviously made for Canadians. And one part of our roadmap is looking at all the future trends and making sure we're building out towards that vision. You don't build Rome overnight. So obviously this is a multi-year journey that we're on. But the second thing is, I think that's a huge amount of opportunity still for Canadian e-commerce. I think if you look at and we've all seen the numbers before, right? Offline payment methods, offline commerce is starting to shift more into digital. Digital is growing twice as fast as offline, but you're talking about the difference between still 7 trillion in Canada online versus something like 38 trillion offline, right? So that shift is still happening. So retailers are still in some ways benefiting or are positioning still to make sure that they're ready for that huge shift from offline to online. And then even in the payments world, you're starting to see digital wallets taking a larger and larger share of driving that growth as volume starts to shift online. Digital wallets are taking more and more market share. And I think it's important for us as Canadians to make sure that there is a Canadian solution, a Canadian wallet out there that is built. As we said, we offer something uniquely to both retailers and consumers. On the merchant side, we're not only offering you more conversion from a checkout perspective, a convenience perspective that we're offering our customers, but we're also offering you a way to lower your cost, right? Which I can safely say not all payment services can claim that, right? And so we're in it to help sort of the ecosystem and to drive that e-commerce. So as e-commerce in Canada starts to grow, which it will, and it is, and merchants want to take advantage, I think they deserve a better payment solution that can help them accelerate that.
Now, for merchants that want to learn more about KONEK, what's the best next steps?
I think first thing is you can definitely go visit konek.ca as we prep for launch and reach out to Interac to find out more about how you can sort of get introduced and integrate KONEK. And the second thing is, if you are a Moneris merchant who's our first sort of acquired that's going to be partnering with us, definitely reach out to them and find out more as well about how you can sort of integrate with KONEK.
Congratulations on the launch. I think this is going to be a success. It sounds like something that's going to be terrific for Canadian retail industry, for consumers, and for everyone. So thank you so much for joining us today. This has been Kris Zanuldin. He's the head of KONEK at Interac. Thank you for so much.
No, thanks again for having me on. I appreciate it.
And I'm Craig Patterson. I'm the founder and publisher of Retail Insider. So thank you so much for watching us today or listening to us on this podcast, however you're consuming this. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you again. Take care and bye for now.